Hey guys. So, who knows how this next month is going to go? For those of you who missed the week before we were out, I wanted to record part of this Islam PowerPoint so you could catch up on the notes. So, if you have the notes packet, you can take that out, the notes packet on Islam. If you don't have the notes packet, I'll attach it here as well so that maybe you could print it out, or maybe you could just take handwritten notes on loose leaf paper, whatever you have available to help you. And then if you get stuck at all and you're not sure what to do, just email me. We'll figure something out and we can move forward from there. So I'm going to do the very beginning of the PowerPoint, which most of you have. You just won't have it if you missed like all of last week. If you are trying to catch up completely, go to page 3 of your notes packet. You'll see the bell ringers on the top, and then you'll see the beginning of notes. And then if you've already gotten this part, you can skip this, and I'll let you know when to catch on if you missed Friday. So when looking at the religion of Islam, we're going to look at not just the religion, but also we're going to look at some cultural aspects and then some political aspects. To start with looking at the origins of Islam, I want to look at geography. So if you look here, Islam began on the Arabian Peninsula, and you're going to think of modern-day Saudi Arabia in the city of Mecca. So Islam began on the Arabian Peninsula. At the time, the Arabian Peninsula was mostly just a harsh desert environment where it was inhabited by nomadic Arabs, known as Bedouins, who were herders. They were still kind of like Paleolithic people who were constantly traveling around, but they had animals with them as a source of food. So they were nomadic herders living on the Arabian Peninsula. Bedouins lived in clans or tribes, and they were very, very family related at this time. And sometimes they would feud over food and water because since it's a desert environment, that was limited. They also practiced a polytheistic religion. And so when we see the religion of Islam begin, that religion's going to be monotheistic, and we're going to see a small clash between the new monotheistic religion and the old polytheistic religions. So here's the Arabian Peninsula. You see it's mostly made up of desert. And then you see areas here, like the Fertile Crescent, that have some good fertile soil for farming. You also see that it is a peninsula. So the Arabian Peninsula is really surrounded by the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, and the Persian Gulf. It also pretty easily connects to the Mediterranean Sea, and then if you continued going down through the Arabian Sea, you'd go into the Indian Ocean. By the early 600s, a lot of trade was coming in and out of the Arabian Peninsula, mostly because of their access to water. A prominent city named Mecca, in modern-day Saudi Arabia, was at the crossroads of this trade. It was right off of the Red Sea. Mecca was also the site of a structure called the Kaaba. The Kaaba was a religious shrine where inside of it, it had 360 different relics or idols to different gods, to all the polytheistic gods. So a lot of people would come in and out of Mecca to worship the Kaaba. So if you look here, you see all the different trade routes coming in and out of the out of the Arabian Sea. From the Arabian Sea, from the Silk Road, from the Mediterranean Sea into the Arabian Peninsula. Also, significant location, you see here's the Arabian Peninsula. It's surrounded by the Byzantine Empire and the Persian Empire at the time. And we'll see them kind of come into conflict with the Islamic Empire. When looking at the who instead of the where, we're going to look at a man named Muhammad. Muhammad was born in 570 CE in the city of Mecca, about 100 years after Western Rome fell, if you want to put it into context. He was orphaned. Once he grew up, he married a rich widow. He became a merchant. He traveled around a lot. And he lived in the city of Mecca and was troubled by all the corruption and social inequalities of Mecca. He would often leave the city to go meditate and pray in the mountains. At age 40, while meditating in the mountains, the angel Gabriel, the same one who you would see in other monotheistic religions, Judaism and Christianity, came and told Muhammad that he was a messenger of God. And he spoke from God to Muhammad about how to fix those corruptions and those social inequalities that Muhammad so much wanted to fix. So, when talking about Muhammad, we're not going to show any images of Muhammad because just like the Byzantine Empire, it's when you looked at icons, Muslims want to prevent worshiping an image and want to worship Allah or God Himself. So we're going to look at more like calligraphy and mosaic discs like this. Muhammad continued to receive word from God and recorded it. And those recorded words from God is what makes up the Islamic holy book, the Quran. So the Quran is different than books like the New Testament of the Bible and the Torah for Judaism, because those books were more of like history and stories of Jesus's life. And they're still really significant. But when looking at the Quran is seen as the direct word of God. So when you're reading it, you feel like you're actually reading the direct word of God. And that's why a lot of times um, you'll see or you'll hear it's not really supposed to be translated, because if it's translated it kind of distorts the direct word of God. Muhammad taught that Allah, or God in Arabic, same God for Christianity and Judaism, Allah is just the word for God in Arabic, was the one and only God, and that all other gods should be abandoned. So he was preaching monotheism. With this, Muhammad started the religion of Islam, which means submission to Allah. Muslim is the word for a follower of Islam, and it means someone who submits to the will of Allah. Muhammad accepted Judaism and Christianity as religions and accepted Abraham, Moses, and Jesus as prophets. In fact, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are all considered Abrahamic religions, drawing roots from Abraham. In Islam, though, Muhammad was viewed as the last and greatest of those prophets. So Muslims don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah or their prophet. Muhammad was the last and greatest prophet. So if you look here, you can kind of see a family tree based on Abraham and how you see Judaism and Christianity and Islam all deriving from that. When looking at the beliefs of Islam, the main beliefs that we learn for this class are known as the 5 pillars, a set of practices that Muslims follow to have that submission or connection to God. The first pillar is faith, or Shahada. Shahada is a declaration of faith in Allah as the one God and Muhammad as his prophet. And this really stresses the idea of monotheism, the belief in one God. And this was so important back in the time when Islam started, because it was so surrounded by polytheistic religions. So by having this pillar, this declaration of faith in one God, it's a huge statement in this time period. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. The second pillar is prayer, or salah, 5 times a day. So Muslims pray 5 times a day towards the city of Mecca. And this is kind of what, when we're looking at this, we're looking at true submission to Allah. You're taking time out of your day 5 times to connect to God. And this is really significant because it kind of takes people out of the material world and it makes them remember and connect to God 5 times a day. The third pillar, alms, or zakat. Zakat is a charity that's given to the mosque for poor and needy people. This charity is sometimes, especially today, a tax. And it's not a tax on income, it's a tax on wealth. So what happens typically is you have a savings account, and that account will be taxed, and part of that money will be given to people who need that. So this is an important part, especially for Muhammad and for Allah. It's a way to purify yourself, to purify your wealth, to make sure that you don't focus too much on the material world. Because if you think back to Muhammad, he was kind of troubled by social inequalities and by corruption in Mecca. And this really connects to that past. The fourth pillar is fasting, or Ramadan. Muslims fast during the holy month of Ramadan, which is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. Not the calendar that we use, so it's not September. This year it's going to start in May. So when looking at fasting during the holy month of Ramadan, Muslims do not eat or drink water from sun up to sundown. But once the sun goes down, Muslims can eat, and they typically at the end of Ramadan, we'll have a holiday and we'll have a feast. Uh, and so if you want to watch some videos, there's a bunch of videos on Ramadan that you can watch, or I can poll some of my students when we get back from AP. They really like to teach about Islam and some of their practices, and they like to describe the feasts that they have. So maybe I can ask them to come to our class and talk about their experiences during Ramadan. The fifth pillar is called the Hajj, or the Hajj. And the Hajj is really important because it's really what symbolizes your connection to God and to Muhammad as the prophet. And the Hajj is a pilgrimage that Muslims take, a religious journey to Mecca once in their lifetime, where they circle the Kaaba 7 times and they do a bunch of other rituals that represents a lot of the paths that Muhammad went on in his life. And this religious journey really connects you to God, connects you to the religion of Islam, connects you to other Muslims that go on the Hajj at the same time. And it's a really significant way to just truly submit yourself to Allah. So here is the circling of the Kaaba during the Hajj. Mecca City. The Islamic place of worship is known as the mosque. So here is a mosque in the Middle East. You see a lot of significant architectural features of the Islamic world, like minarets, which are towers for prayer. You see domes that they kind of get based on Byzantine and Roman domes. And then you see arches, but part of the Islamic architecture is taking arches and adding more detail to it. So this is called a horseshoe arch.